We unfortunately have a high level of hospital-acquired infection in this country. There have been enormous efforts in recent years to reduce it, and we are succeeding, but we still have a long way to go. And one of the problems that most hospitals have is they have more infected patients than you have single rooms in which to isolate them. So we really need a flexible means of improving the numbers of isolation rooms in a hospital.
I learned that it's often better to treat a patient in the ward than it is to take them to a side room. I learned that about half of MRSA infected patients do not have an airborne infection, but the infection is just on their skin. So what I set about doing was a way of physically isolating a patient in a ward without stigmatizing them and without having to move them. What I found was that a transparent screen with a visual trigger on the end of it would act as enough of a physical barrier and the psychological trigger to prevent movement of staff and patients and objects between patient beds, and also encourage correct hand hygiene when a staff or visitor was entering that bed area. For this product to be practical in a hospital, it couldn't just be a large, rigid, see-through screen. It needed to be retractable, portable and flexible to different sizes. So I then set about inventing a screen that could be retracted to any length and left there to remain rigid. I came up with a number of mock-up prototypes, ways of doing this, things that came down from the ceiling, things that worked more on the psychological aspect of division, such as laser beams and light and sound, and down to the far more practical things of ways in which a divider could be deployed and pushed back again. The design I finally came up with was inspired by a nurse who said, "Can't you just make a screen that you pull out and push into itself?" And that was what I went on to develop.
With the KwickScreen, the nurses I asked who had trialled it responded very favourably to it. They liked its ease of installation, its portability, and the fact that it didn't make the patient feel psychologically cut off from their fellow patients. I was quite impressed with the simplicity of the design and the fact that its transparency does facilitate patient safety. I appreciate also that the opaque screens will enhance patient dignity in the event of a procedure being required which requires such privacy.
The key benefits of the screen are that it can be stored with minimal footprint. It's then very easy to move. A single nurse can wheel it from wherever it is stored over to the patient. It's then extremely easy to install. Just by pulling it, the screen can be extended to any length to fit any size bed space. It then stays there for the duration of the time that the patient is in the ward, and then it's very easy to clean. For removal or for an emergency situation, the screen is just pushed back in on itself and then wheeled away into the storeroom or for deep cleaning. We've also got the added feature of having a hand hygiene unit which can just clip onto the front. This unit has the gloves, the gown, the alcohol gel and the bin that otherwise is provided for an infected patient, but in a number of different ways. This puts it all together in a very small footprint. It's there when the visitor or the staff needs it, where they need it, acting as the visual trigger, but also making it a lot easier to observe correct hand hygiene.
Since we assessed these screens on the ward, we've taken a lot of comments from patients and nurses and indeed doctors as to how they might be improved. They are very effective in persuading doctors to wash their hands, interestingly. So these design changes have been put into the screens. We now have a Mark II. It's now going to be very interesting to see if these work in preventing cross-infection in the ward.
The product has been trialled as part of the HCAI Technology Innovation Programme and their Smart Ideas programme. The trial results are very positive. All the products worked. There were no faults. Generally, the nurses, the staff, the patients, the porters were extremely happy. The product was easy to use, easy to clean, took up a minimal footprint in the ward. So we're now on to the next stage, which is designing this for manufacture so that the product can be made in high volumes at a appropriate price for the NHS. We've also come to realise that there are a number of other benefits of having a pull-out screen in hospitals. By changing the fabric in the screen, we can have an opaque screen which would act as a privacy and dignity divider between people on a ward. We can have a screen with a window in it which gives, it's sort of a halfway between the screen that physically divides someone, providing the visible isolation or just the contact isolation. This could be used in intensive care units where you want to make each patient feel like they're in their own space so that nurses and visitors observe the correct hand hygiene operation, but that doesn't actually set them off into a different side room. We've shown the economic assessment showing the huge advantages this can have for HCAI cases in improving the throughput and bed stock management. We've had trial results back showing that it's easy to use, it's intuitive, it's robust, it's practical in the hospital environment. What we now need to do is explain this case to across the NHS so that it can be adopted for the number of different uses and just improve the way that hospital wards are managed.